Hi everybody, welcome back, and if you're new, welcome. My name is Gabby, and if you've never been here before, never watched any of my videos, have no idea what I do, I cover true crime cases, and all the cases that I cover are a little bit older. They're all basically 20 years or older, so if that's something that you might be interested in, maybe go down below, click that subscribe button, and also make sure to turn on the post notifications to be notified every time that I upload. So it's been about 3 weeks since I uploaded here on my channel, and if you know anything about me, I absolutely despise taking any sort of hiatus from YouTube, but I did take a little bit of a mental health break, and then when I was ready to come back, I got locked out of my channel, which is like just my luck, but I'm back in, so I'm able to upload again. And the first video that I wanted to do coming back was the case that we're covering today, and it's a case that I definitely have not been able to stop talking about, even to people in my personal life. The case that I'm covering today was requested by a longtime subscriber of mine named Charlie. I recognize names, and they've given me a few requests in the past. I'm pretty sure I've covered 1 or 2 cases they have recommended for me to cover. But as soon as I saw the email and I saw the title of the news articles having to do with it, it's unlike anything I've heard before, and I wanted to learn more. And the more that I learned about it, the more that I knew that I was going to dedicate a video to it. Today's case, though, does have a relation to 9/11, and I know that when the tragedy of 9/11 is brought up in any form, that a lot of the comments can sway away from the original topic and become very heated and, of course, very political. I want people, though, to focus on the case at hand and to remember that this girl lost her life in an extremely horrific way, and to keep the comments compassionate out of respect for her and her loved ones. With all of that being said, this is the case of Midtown Jane Doe. 301 West 46th Street in the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood in Manhattan, New York used to be the location of the popular rock nightclub, a known music venue called The Scene. The Scene opened in 1964 and was owned by Steve Paul. Some of its more notable performers include Pink Floyd, Fleetwood Mac, Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, and The Doors. It was also a usual spot for artists and socialites like Andy Warhol and Edie Sedgwick. Steve's original goal for the club, though, was for it to be a place for talents from Broadway to perform and mingle, but the trajectory of it changed and it became more of a staple in the rock scene. The club officially closed its doors only 5 years after opening. Its final day was July 12th of 1969, and it doesn't seem like Steve Paul ever officially verified the cause for its closure, but based on an account from Sterling Morrison, a member of the band Velvet Underground, it appears that Steve's refusal to pay protection money to the New York Mafia was the cause. This allegedly began a lot of physical altercations in the bar, and the bar was heading towards losing its liquor license. Other than The Scene, it also had been a speakeasy called the Cave of the Fallen Angels. This was before The Scene took over in the 60s. After The Scene closed, it doesn't seem like the basement area, which is where The Scene was, had been used for another establishment, but upstairs there had later been Lady Ann's Full Moon Saloon, Collins Bar, and an adult video store. This is what the location looked like in the early 2000s. In 2010, though, a complete skyscraper had been attached to it, which is now Riu Plaza Hotel at 305 West 46th Street. Today, at its 301 location, sits a restaurant called The Theater Buffet, an all-you-can-eat buffet specializing in American dinner and dessert. So I did a little bit of floating around online to try to find a website that did any sort of a deep dive into this location, and I did come across one. So it seems like there had been some establishments down in the basement area before, and then The Scene took over, and then after The Scene left, there wasn't really anything happening in the basement area. I think it was mostly just used for storage. When it comes to the restaurant that sits at that location today, most of the people who dine there probably have no idea the building's influential music history or the gruesome discovery made in the basement in the year of 2003. On February 10th of 2003, construction workers were breaking away the concrete on the floor of the basement at 301 West 46th Street, which had been a rundown apartment building for some time. This concrete floor had been described by a few of my sources as being fresh, so it had been more recently poured than the concrete below it. They were working on an expansion of the basement when something caught their eye. Some material that looked like carpet. one of the men started chipping away at the cement and pulled up a rust-colored rug. And this is when he uncovered a human skull inside of the rug. One of the construction workers ran out of the basement and found a police officer nearby. The New York Police Department was notified immediately, and Detective Gerard Gardner took over the case. They would then locate, encased in cement, almost described as a cement box, the rest of the skeletal remains. Remains that had been tied up and wrapped in a rug. It seemed like this individual had been hogtied, hands and feet tied behind their back and then all tied together and tied to their neck with an extension cord. Officials had to do a lot of breaking away, a lot of slow, delicate breaking away of cement to uncover the full skeletal remains. The medical examiner concluded that this victim was a young female and had died as a result of strangulation from being hogtied. At the time, law enforcement stated, "At this point, we believe she was a young, middle-class woman who probably hopped on a bus to New York full of dreams, but who ended up on the streets." Due to the level of decomposition of her body, it was believed that she had been there for many years. They originally guessed up to 15 years, but within some time, they would discover that the number was far larger than just 15. But years and years just enveloped in cement behind an old coal-burning furnace of a grimy basement. It was obviously not believed that she did this to herself, so she was classified immediately as a homicide victim. They wanted to know who did this to her, but first they needed to find out who she was. Cold case detective Ryan Glass of the NYPD stated, "With any investigation, especially a homicide investigation, the first thing you need to have is a name to the victim because it gives you a starting point. Any little bit of information helps, especially with cold cases." There was quite a lot of trash in this basement, but they did find some objects along with her remains that they thought could have been connected. The first thing was a gold ring found on her pinky finger with the initials PMCG on it. The next was a 1966 Bulova watch, a 1969 dime. Some sources say 1968, but I think it was just so old they couldn't tell if it was 68 or 69, and also a tiny green toy soldier. From this little toy soldier, they did theorize that possibly she had given birth to a child. They couldn't think of any other reason she might have had a little toy soldier with her. These little toy soldiers, though, at the time, even still today, are heavily manufactured, so it's very difficult to try to track down where they were manufactured, what company manufactured them, or even a manufacturing date. She had been wearing pantyhose and a 32A size bra. With her clothing, they also had located a tag from the Lady Garment Workers Union. The International Ladies Garment Workers Union was the largest labor union to represent workers in the women's garment industry in the United States, with major centers in New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Newark. They ran from 1900 to 1995. Her clothing was described as glittery, possibly something that you would wear to a party. The tag sewn into the clothing, though, was one that started being used in December of 1987, so they thought that she may have had her life taken after that time, but this would be incorrect. Authorities were thinking that she had possibly originated from elsewhere in the country or even world and came to New York City in the hopes of a successful life, but they really had no solid proof to back this up. We have seen this a lot in John and Jane Doe cases out of popular cities, especially ones like New York City or Los Angeles, with her having clothing from the Lady Garment Workers Union. Is it possible that she could have worked for them since they did have a center in New York City? This is something to consider, but they've never proven this to be true or false. Detective Robert Hahn told ABC7, "The people that resided in the building at the time were interviewed and had no involvement in the case as far as we could determine. They had no knowledge of the body." From what I read online, it seems like everybody who lived in the building was just as shocked about the discovery as authorities were. Authorities spread the information of the discovery of this Jane Doe the best that they could. A Jane Doe that they would give the name Midtown Jane Doe. Even though they were doing a good job spreading the news of this Jane Doe to New York City and surrounding areas, no tips came into the department that led them any closer to discovering her identity. They combed through thousands of missing persons reports and arrest records throughout the United States, especially trying to locate a woman with the initials PMCG, But they were having no luck. They kept ruling them out one by one. One aspect that made things difficult was where she was located. It was the location where many sex workers or people who were homeless would stay for a short period of time and then move on. She could have been someone going through a rough patch in life, from out of town, and was met with foul play. She could have been someone with a dangerous lifestyle whose family never reported her missing because they believed she was still alive and continuing to make questionable decisions in life. She had been found near a section of Midtown known as Minnesota Strip, and this area was where many girls and young women from the Midwest ended up after running into some trouble. New York is also a place with a very high crime rate. It's not unfamiliar with murder, especially unsolved ones. We also have to take into consideration that there have been a few serial killers that operated in New York City throughout the years. They were not easily ruling people out like, say, Richard Cottingham, also known as the Torso Killer or Times Square Killer, who was convicted of 6 murders in New York between 1972 to 1980 and convicted of 12 murders in New Jersey between 1967 to 1978. He did frequently target sex workers. He is currently facing life behind bars at Southwood State Prison in Bridgeton, New Jersey. Then there's Joel Rifkin, also known as Joel the Ripper, who has been sentenced to 203 years or life behind bars for the murders of 9 women between the years of 1989 to 1993. His murders primarily took place in New York and New Jersey, and it is believed that he may have killed many others. He is currently imprisoned at Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York. There are, of course, quite a few more serial killers around the New York area that we could discuss, but these are the 2 main ones that are highlighted in Midtown Jane Doe's case. Information, though, regarding her case for many years was very limited, but the theories were endless, almost from the very beginning. Now I want to quickly discuss something that was quite important before we had methods like genetic genealogy when it came to identifying John and Jane Doe's, and that is the person's teeth. When it came to her teeth, they theorized that she may have come from a family that was able to afford good dental care, and then she possibly hit her adult years and fell on hard times and was unable to afford the dental care that she had previously been able to. She had extensive dental work done, including fillings, crowns, and root canals. Yet she had extreme decay. So it made sense to them that she possibly started out with the ability to afford this expensive dental care for her teeth and then on her own was unable to. In 2003, they did end up releasing a composite sketch of what the victim may have looked like in life thanks to artist Louis Trowbridge, who went off of measurements of the skull taken in March of 2003 by forensic anthropologist Donna Fontana. This drawing was spread with the hopes that new information would come forward. New tips did come in, but yet again, these led them nowhere closer to discovering the Jane Doe's real name. At this time, they believed the victim had been of Irish descent, been between 17 to 19 years old due to the maturity of her teeth, and stood between 4 feet 11 inches tall and 5 feet 4 inches tall. This case, though, quickly ran cold. It wouldn't be reopened until 14 years later in 2017. They decided to take another look at the case considering there have been so many advancements in technology since the year of 2003. One thing that they decided to do was attempt to create a clay sculpture of what the victim may have looked like while alive. Forensic anthropologist Angela Soler, with help from the New York Academy of Art, worked tirelessly to carve a clay sculpture of the victim. They also went through with isotope analysis. They tested the chemicals in her hair to see what areas in the world she may have originated from or spent time in. If you are not too familiar with isotope testing, our bodies are basically sponges and absorb different factors of our environment. From this, they thought that she may have originated from the Midwest. This, though, would eventually be discovered to be completely false after she was officially identified. There have been many times in cases where isotope testing was spot on, but there have been many times where it was far off, and this was one of those times. The NYPD decided that it was time to partner with Parabon Nanolabs, which is a company based in Reston, Virginia, that develops nanopharmaceuticals and provides DNA phenotyping services for law enforcement organizations. They are able to take DNA from an unknown individual and discover more characteristics about this person, like hair color, skin color, and eye color. They also have a snapshot service where they can create a reconstruction photo of what the person possibly looked like in life. Parabon Nanolabs created a snapshot for Midtown Jane Doe. They believed her to have brunette hair, blue, green, or hazel colored eyes, and fair skin. At this point, they were creating a more thorough picture of who she may have been. The more they pieced together, the more they hoped the information regarding her would reach the right person out there. That possibly one of her loved ones would stumble upon a news article revolving around her and think, there she is. We finally found her after all of this time. The thing though that would finally give Midtown Jane Doe her name back was genetic genealogy. Genetic genealogy is the method of extracting DNA, creating a DNA profile, uploading that DNA profile onto a genetic database in the hopes of locating familial DNA. Sometimes even mapping out an entire family tree, finding the closest relative to the person and piecing together information to see if they know who the unknown individual could be. They went through with genetic genealogy for this Jane Doe, and just last year in 2023, they were able to locate a family of hers. Thanks to the Forensics Investigations Divisions at the NYPD Crime Lab, they were able to construct an entire family tree for this Jane Doe. Through genetics and records, they were pretty positive they knew who she was. They believed that she was a teenager born in 1953 whose parents were deceased and that she had no siblings. All leads on this girl's paternal side reached an impasse, so they decided to look at her maternal side. They were able to locate possible relatives of this girl and conduct multiple interviews with them. In one interview, authorities spoke to a 90-year-old woman in Florida who said that she remembered her sister babysitting some younger cousins in Brooklyn when she was living there in the 1950s. It is believed that one of these younger cousins was Midtown Jane Doe. Genetic experts stated that if they compared her DNA to a specific cousin from her maternal side, they could identify her as being the suspected girl. This direct cousin, though, whose DNA they needed to verify Midtown Jane Doe's identity, was unfortunately deceased. Detective Glass wasn't sure what else to do, but when he spoke to her son, they had their breakthrough. Her son remembered how after the attack on the World Trade Center in 2001, people with missing loved ones submitted DNA to compare to the victims later located in the rubble. He stated that his sister was killed in 9/11 and his mother had submitted a DNA swab in the hopes that they would locate her. This DNA was accessed by the NYPD and a DNA test was conducted to compare this DNA to the DNA of Midtown Jane Doe. It was a match showing cousin relation. Her identity was released to the public on April 27th of 2024. Midtown Jane Doe was 16-year-old Patricia Kathleen McGlone, proving the initials on the ring belonged to her. She was born on April 20th of 1953 to parents Patricia and Bernard McGlone. Authorities have discovered most information about Patricia's short life through records. They discovered that her mother, also named Patricia, maiden name Gilligan, was only 21 years old when she married a much older Bernard McGlone. According to the marriage certificate, he was 45, but according to findagrave.com, he would have been 49. Her mother had been living in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and her father in the Upper East Side of Manhattan when they wed. Patricia was born within a year of her parents' marriage. Like I stated before, she was an only child. She grew up on 3rd Avenue in the Sunset Park neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. The McGlone family was Catholic. Patricia had been baptized, received communion, and had confirmation according to Brooklyn Catholic Church records. She had attended both public and Catholic school. It is known that she had attended Charles Dewey Middle School in Sunset Park. I did not see this highlighted anywhere online, but I did see on findagrave.com that Patricia's father did pass away in 1963 when she was only 10 years old. Also, according to findagrave.com, Patricia had half siblings. It lists a half brother named Robert who passed in 2002 at the age of 76 and a half brother named Gerard who passed in 1970 at the age of 40. When it comes to the events leading up to her murder, Detective Glass states that a little bit before they believe that her life was taken, taken, and they believe that her life was taken in 1969. Her attendance really fell off in high school, and she ended up leaving and marrying a much older man, and it is believed that she married this man in 1968. He was in his early 30s, and she was only still just a teenager. Detective Glass describes her as a runaway and truant in the time before her life was taken. It seems like she left school, got married to an older man, and cut off most of the contact that she had with her family. Her biological father was already deceased at this time, and she had no siblings. I'm not sure about cousins, aunts, uncles, but it seems like the main contact that she would have cut off would have been with her mother. Whether her mother was romantically involved with somebody, whether Patricia had a stepfather at the time, is unknown. Detective Glass has stated that he does not believe that her mother was involved in her murder in any way. Whether her mother or any other relatives, possibly a friend, ever filed a missing persons report for her is unknown, but they have never been able to locate one. From what I could piece together online, it does seem like they have come to the conclusion that she was murdered in the year of 1969. There is nothing to legitimately point to that being fact, but it seems like everything for Patricia kind of fell off at that point, and there's no records of anyone seeing her after that year. So it seems like 1969 is the year that she was tragically murdered. Now, one factor that is very confusing is the tag that started getting used in December of 1987. Could there have been some sort of a mistake with this tag? Could the clothing have been placed there years later? We don't know. We have to take into consideration that the nightclub The Scene closed down in 1969, and this was a very popular nightclub even when it was near its end. There were tons of people on the regular coming in and out of that basement. The chances of this young girl being murdered and placed in cement in this nightclub and not one person who attended this nightclub ever saying anything about it, I feel like that's very slim. So I do have to agree with the majority that say that they think that she may have had her life taken a little bit after the scene closed down. Now, people in threads on Reddit and web sleuths have really been trying to piece together Patricia's life, and mostly that involves going through public records. People have discovered the name of her husband, but authorities have not released his name to the public. From everything that I could find online, it is unknown if he is still alive today. He would be up there in age, but there is a chance that he could still be alive. Detective Glass stated, "We're still working on getting information on him, trying to verify what his situation was with her. At this point in the investigation, what I can say is he does have a connection to where she was found." People have done a little bit of sleuthing, a little bit of personal detective work, trying to figure out what this connection could have been. Some people believe that he may have had a connection to the nightclub The Scene. Maybe he knew the basement really well because he spent time there. Then there's the theory that maybe he and Patricia had lived in one of the apartments above the basement. Of course, 1969 was quite a few decades ago, but Detective Glass says that they are still trying to locate people who lived in that area at that time. He said, "Anything they remember from the time frame back then, anybody who lived in the building, anyone who can give us some more background on her or this person that she was married to, any sort of information that we can follow up on. I'm a father of 3 daughters, so I can only imagine what type of childhood she had back then to where she ended up being murdered." The way this entire case panned out, the way everything came together, is just almost unbelievable. A girl's life was tragically taken in possibly 1969, and a loved one's DNA submitted over 3 decades later would identify her another 2 decades later. When I say that this is unlike any other case out there, I mean it. When it comes to another supposed coincidence in this case, there is one source online that claims, and I could not verify this to be 100% fact or not, but it claims that the woman who lost her life in 9/11, the relative of Patricia, was actually also named Patricia. Detective Glass is asking anyone who knew Patricia Kathleen McGlone, her family, or the area around Steve Paul's The Scene around the time of her murder to please come forward with anything you remember. I truly hope that within time some more information about this case can be uncovered, and the NYPD is definitely keeping things very hush-hush, and rightfully so, because a lot of people from the public can become involved and it can jeopardize a case, but I feel like they're probably doing everything that they can to try to figure out exactly what happened that led to her murder. I, of course, cannot say for certain, but I do have to also agree with the majority when they say that the fact that Detective Glass stated that her husband did have some connection to the building does show that they're more zeroing in on him. Also, like I stated before, some do believe that she possibly had given birth to a child due to the toy soldier, but they have never been able to verify this for certain. And I have not seen anything when it comes to whether they were able to go through with genetic genealogy and found anyone in a genetic database that seemed to be her child. Of course, I cannot say for certain, but it doesn't seem like they have found a child of hers out there somewhere. I want to thank you all, though, for taking a little bit of time out of your day to hear about Patricia's case. It is one that I definitely just could not stop talking about. I mean, this was a young girl. This was a teenager. We don't know exactly what happened before her life was taken, but we do know that it was taken in such a devastating manner, and that so many things happened in New York for the decades between when her life was taken and when she was discovered. And no one had any idea that she was down there except for maybe the person who was responsible. How many millions, millions of people that walked past that building between what's believed to be 1969 and 2003 and had no idea that this girl's body, her skeletal remains, were just down in the basement encased in cement. Like always, if you're going to comment, leave some positivity down below in the comment section, because you never know who may come across this video. If there are any other cases that you possibly want me to cover here on my channel, make sure to send those requests over to gabulosiscaserequests@gmail.com. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day. Stay safe like always, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.